So, y'all, I remember not too long ago hearing my mom on the phone, and she was talking to her sisters, my aunts, and they were having a good old keekee session, y'all. They were just like laughing, cracking up, just gossiping, right? And I'm not gonna go into detail about like what they were actually gossiping about, but it was such a beautiful thing to hear, just hearing my mom and her sisters just be so tickled about, their conversation. And at some point in the conversation, I kind of go on about my business or whatever. And then a few minutes in, at some point in the conversation, I noticed that like my mom's tone started getting real serious. And she started just dropping like her gems, dropping her wisdom. And I'm pretty sure my aunts were probably doing the same thing or exchanging, just information or whatever. And then probably like 2 or 3 hours after that, someone that I would consider a spiritual mentor of mine, she made a post on social media that was talking about how women need to get back to gossiping. So I'm like, okay, wait a second. Like we on to something here. For me to hear this and feel what I'm feeling, and then just a few hours later, I get on social media and, someone that I have a tremendous amount of respect for also is talking about, we need to start gossiping. I'm like, let me get in on this conversation. So I want to talk to you ladies today about the power of sharing stories with one another and how that is a protective mechanism that we have honestly been kind of bamboozled into thinking was gossiping. I don't know if you've ever had this type of experience. I'm sure many of you have though, where you can remember, either getting your hair done and your mom is on the phone and she's talking, or you go to a beauty salon and you see women swapping stories. You know what I mean? Like what happened to me, hearing my mom on the phone with her sisters and, they are just having a time on the phone. But there was this space, y'all, where women were in a position to help one another through their storytelling, through their sharing of life experiences. And over time, and I don't want to just sit up and just blame men for this or make this a man bashing session, because that's definitely not the type of time that I'm on, but I do want to bring light to a situation, and I want to encourage you to get back to gossiping, because we were conditioned to believe that this was wrong, that we were just running our mouths, or that we are out here telling private business. You spreading your business to any and everybody willing to listen. I have been told this before in my past, and I know that this spans, deep in ancestral roots where we were taught to keep quiet. We were taught to stay muzzled, when really sharing your experience is honestly extending the lifeline of another woman. So that's why this conversation is so important. You having the life experience that you have, at least in my opinion, it wasn't by happenstance. It wasn't simply just, God or the universe, Mother God, whoever picked you and said, you know what, her life is going to be a struggle. Her life is going to be problematic. She's going to deal with all the F boys. Like, that's not what happened. I do believe that we all experienced the things that we did with an intention, with a purpose, because there are some people that they didn't get signed up for this, right? They did not get signed up to deal with the narcissistic abuse, with any sort of abuse. They didn't get picked when it came down to, dealing with unhealthy relationships or a cycle of unhealthy relationships. So because that might be you, because that was me, I personally believe that a part of the reason why we were selected to experience these things is because we are expected to be the storytellers. We are expected to share the experiences that we have lived through, that we have thrived after, and make sure that other women do not experience it, at least not on our watch. Now, if they choose to go off and still mess with Tommy, Tim, Joe, Billy, Bob, whoever, and you know that they're an F-boy, you know that they're no good, you know that they have a pattern of abuse, well, of course, that's going to be her prerogative, but at least she heard the story. At least she heard a woman tell her story. At least she got the advice. At least she got the knowledge. She got the clues, the cues, like this is what you do, this is what you don't do. That is what gossiping does for women. Gossip protects women. And the reason why I even use the terminology gossip is because honestly, y'all, I want to put an end to making that a bad word. Like, I don't want that to be a negative, narrative or have a negative connotation around gossiping, because that is what saves women. I never forget, I was at a beauty salon. I used to be a hairstylist, and I was working at this salon. And there was a woman. She was slightly older than well, no, she was significantly older than all of us. Like, we are all. This was when I worked at the JCPenney salons. Y'all, I don't even know if JCPenney has salons still. I don't know. But anyway, I was working at the JCPenney salon, and I remember this older woman would come in all the time, and we would just all get excited. We're talking about a whole bunch of 18, 19-year-olds. But we would all get so excited when she would come in, because she would always have a story. She would always have some sort of like gem that she would drop. And at that age, I don't know if I knew that that's what it was called, but I just remember the feeling of like, oh, mama finna come in and teach. Like, she finna come in and tell us something going on, right? I remember feeling like she was talking to me directly. Like, she was literally calling on me, looking at me, even when she wasn't. But just her stories, the experiences that she would share about the things that was going on in her life, or sometimes she would mention her daughter's life, like some of the things that she would just share, it would always resonate with me, and it would be at like perfect timing. I remember when I was, like I said, 18, 19 years old, I had this boyfriend. He was really no good, y'all. Like, he did not have his head on straight at all. He was very much so interested in being like a thug, all this type of stuff. Even though he came from a good family, he was just like hell bent on doing the wrong thing. And I was in this kind of tug of war with him. One minute we together, and then the next minute we not, all of that, right? And we were in that kind of period where we're off, but we're talking, and I can kind of see the cycle happening of, oh, he's going to try to, come back, and he's going to try to talk me into being into a relationship again. And so mama comes into the salon, right? We called her mama. She comes into the salon that day. She sits down. She starts putting her bag and all of her supplies and stuff down. And I'm sitting next to her. We used to swap stations. So I'm sitting next to her that day. And she looks over to me and she says, you're such a pretty girl. And I was like, oh, thank you so much. And I appreciate it. And she says, it's a shame that you wasting all your pretty on that boy. And mind y'all, I ain't tell nobody about this boy. I did not talk about this boy. I ain't never brought him up. I didn't have no, what I'm saying? I really wasn't cool with a lot of the people at the at the salon, if I'm being honest. There was one girl that I was cool with, but we were like work friends, you know what I mean? So she didn't really know too much about my personal life. So the fact that she could just sense that there was something in me that was having this issue with this boy, right? And the way she said it, she just looked over at me and she was so calm. And she was just like, you too pretty, or you wasting all the pretty on that boy. And I remember putting my head down and I was like, yeah. I said, I don't always know what to do about him. And she said, well, I can tell you what to do about him. And I said, okay, well, what? And she's like, if you ever got a question whether or not somebody is yours, they're not yours. If you ever have to question if somebody is yours, they're not yours. And I just remember sitting there like, okay, because I understood what she was saying. And with so little words, y'all, I understood what she was saying. And I remember that was actually the last time, because he did exactly what he always did, like clockwork. But that was the last time that I continued that cycle with him. He called me a few hours, into my day, and hey, how you doing? And I want to come and pick you up. And, can I take you on your lunch break somewhere? And the JCPenney was connected to the mall. So if I would tell him no, that like we can't go, out to lunch somewhere, he would say, okay, well, just meet me at the food court and I'll get you some lunch from the food court. So he always had his little plan A, plan B's, the whole nine. And I remember I talked to him on my lunch break, and I was like, no, I don't want to do that. I'm busy today. And then when I got off work, he called again. But that whole day I had spent thinking about what she said. And she had just been doing her clients. I'm doing my clients, But I remember just sitting there, like, thinking about it over and over again, like, you're wasting your pretty on this boy. Like, you are, you know what I mean? And you are constantly questioning if he's yours. You are constantly questioning it. You're never sure about, is he cheating? Is he not? Is he loyal? Is he talking crazy about you? And there was a lot of history and a backstory behind that relationship. So I had so much insecurity within that relationship that I was always questioning, always wondering. So when she said that, it just sat with me the whole day. So I get off work And he calls me again, and I'm trying to break up, like officially break up with him, because like I said, we was kind of in that middle round where it was like we kind of together but we not together, that stupid stuff. But I'm on the phone with him, and I am trying to tell him like, hey, I don't want to keep doing this, we really just need to like part ways, like I don't want to be friends, like none of that, right? So he starts catching on. He starts realizing like, okay, wait a second, I think she's serious. So he's like, I'm coming over. No, I don't want you to come over. No, 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 I'm coming over. We got to talk about this. So he comes over, and he didn't live very far from me. So by the time I got home, he was already like pulling up in my apartment complex. So I get out of my car and I just stand by my car, right? Because I'm like, you're not coming in. We ain't doing none of that. So he gets out of his car and he's upset. He's like, I don't understand. I'm saying, what do you mean you don't want to deal with me anymore? All of this. And I just remember saying to him, like, I'm wasting my pretty on you. Like, I just remember repeating what mama said to me over and over. And I was like, I'm wasting my pretty on you. Like, I'm not going to keep doing this. You don't really want to be in a relationship. You have no interest in being in a real relationship, especially not with me. So I'm not going to keep going back and forth. I'm not going to keep waiting and wondering if this is really going to be a thing, or are we going to break up a month from now? Like, I'm done, right? So I ended. And let me tell y'all how spirit works. The very next day, I go back to work. I am sad because I just ended, a relationship, on again, off again relationship with somebody who I truly loved and cared about. And this is my first like real teenage romance, all that stuff. But I'm sad. And I end up sitting next to mama again. And so she looks over at me and she says, don't worry, it's going to get better. It always gets better. It's going to get better. And I'm looking at her and I'm like, how does this woman know this? Like, how does she know what's going on when I'm not saying nothing? And so I just shook my head, and, a couple hours go by. She don't really have as many clients that day. So a couple hours go by. She kind of got the walk-ins here and there. So then she comes over to me. I'm washing brushes. And she comes over to me and she says, my daughter, and she says, well, she's not my real daughter. She's my stepdaughter. She said, but my daughter was dealing with a man who, was always playing games with her. And I had to recently tell her that she needed to let that man go because he was going to, I'm paraphrasing because this was so long ago. But essentially, he was going to suck the life out of her. Like, he was really going to drain her and bring her life down. And she starts describing this man. Tell me why, y'all, this is the same man. This was the same man that I'm dealing with. The exact same man. Now, to give kind of context, we did not live in a big city, right? We lived in a pretty small community. A lot of people knew a lot of people. So it was an unfortunate reality that you might find yourself dealing with somebody that somebody else had dealt with. You know what I mean? When I tell you we had under like 100,000 people. So it was small, but it was so crazy to me how, as she is describing him, and she's talking about his temperament, and she's kind of giving me examples of the things that her daughter, or her stepdaughter rather, had went through. I look at her and I said, is his name such and such? And something just told me to ask. And she looked up at me and she was like, yeah. And then she just put her head down and she started shaking her head. And she said, I knew it. She said, I knew he was no good. Just like that. She's like, I knew he was no good. So y'all, when I tell y'all, and I was real feisty back in the day, so I had no problem at all with getting on that phone and calling that man and cussing him out one good time because he deserved it. But this is what gossiping does. This is what gossiping does. Gossiping protects women. All right? So I need you to start getting very comfortable with sharing your experiences, with telling what happened, with posting receipts. I need you to get so comfortable. And we're not doing this for the purposes of blasting somebody to humiliate them. That should not be the energy or the agenda. It should be all about, how do I protect my sister? How do I protect the next woman? How do I make sure that the cycles that these unhealthy partners are willing to put women through, how do I contribute to putting an end to it? That's why we talk. That's why we communicate. That's why there's community, why there's sisterhood. It's not just so that we can sit up and go on a bashing session about men. It is to protect each other. Because here's what I will tell you. Healthy masculine men, they're not in those type of conversations. They're not sitting up here where you got to ask the question or where you got to post it online, are we dating the same man? Like, they're not in that. because they are hyper focused on being in service to the woman that they love, that they care about, that they respect, that they honor. So those men are not a part of the conversation. So you don't have to worry about necessarily protecting yourself from them or protecting your fellow sister from them. It's all these other clowns. So I think that it's just really important for us to start really getting comfortable with using our voices, especially to my ladies who have been in that cycle of dealing with the same type of toxic relationships, dealing with the same cycles of abuse. There is a purpose for that. I promise you were not just signed up to be on relationship struggle bus. There is a reason why you are equipped, why you are built and designed to be able to endure and go through those experiences. It is so that you can be a guide for the next woman. It's so that you can be your sister's keeper, so that you can carry all the wealth of wisdom to ensure that the next woman does not have to go through what you went through. Carry that with a badge of honor. I have gotten to a point in my life where I'm like, I will not be afraid anymore. I will not dim my light. I will not silence myself when it comes down to explaining my life experiences, because I have everything in me to be able to do that, to be able to share these stories, to be able to really sit in divination and talk to, my gods, my ancestors, my higher power, to get clarity on why did I go through that? What did I need to learn from that? How did I need to heal from that? How can I help the next woman so that either she can heal from it or we can prevent it from, entering her experience in the first place? That is what you were designed to do. So I just want to encourage y'all today, start running your mouth. Start running your mouth. Start talking again. Start gossiping again. Start getting in those girl sessions. Start getting in those group chats. Start getting in there. And again, it's not for the purposes of the negative side or the way that they labeled gossiping to be this, negative, we just don't have nothing else to do but talk crazy about men. No, it is to be our sister's keeper. It is to provide wisdom. It's to give guidance. It's to give healthy advice on how to navigate in life, how to navigate in your womanhood. I love the fact that I have women in my life that I can call and go to, but I understand that there are some women that don't have that. There are some women that they don't have the connection with their mothers or grandmothers. Like, I didn't have a relationship with either of my grandmothers in the physical sense. On the ancestral side, me and my grandmamas are like this. You know what I mean? So I wish that I had the ability to, have a relationship with them while they were here. So I understand that sometimes we don't get that. That should be even more motivation to seek out community within women. That should make you feel inspired and motivated to say, well, you know what? Let me get into the room with some women. Let me just listen. Let me get into the room with them. Let me learn from them. I just recently had to tell my son, I said, you've only been on the planet for 11 years. Like, you can't possibly know everything, because he at that age, y'all. He at that age where he think he know everything. So I said, you can't possibly know everything because you've only been on the planet for 11 years. I can't possibly know everything because I've only been on the planet for 36 years, but I do know a lot. Not only have I lived multiple lives throughout my 36 years, which many of us have, but I also know a lot because I listened to elders, I listened to wise counsel, and I was open to receiving information. I wasn't always there, especially teens, early 20s. Y'all know how we do, you know what I mean? Where we don't want to listen to nobody. We think we got it all of that, right? But as I got older, y'all, oh my God, it got to a point to where like late 20s was when things started clicking. And I started realizing, like, hold on a second. If I don't start listening, if I don't start being open to receiving feedback, to receiving guidance from other women especially, and this is not to say that you can't learn from men, but I do believe that, young boys will learn better from men and young women learn better from women. I do believe that. But I had to come to grips that I was going to create series of hardship for myself simply because I was hard-headed, because I didn't want to listen, didn't want to take nobody's advice. So ladies, we can't stay silent simply because society has deemed gossiping as a negative thing. Because society has made us think that we are, little chatty patties and we don't got nothing else to do but to sit up and talk about such and such. No, baby, there was so much healing that took place in those circles of gossip. So y'all tell me what y'all want to gossip about and I'm down. All right. Just go ahead, put me on the group chat, put me in a 3-way call. I'm down for it. All right. So let's get the gossiping so we can get the healing. Until next time, y'all, be well.